Well, good morning. This is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred. Really glad you could join me today out here in the vegetable garden. You know, it's a beautiful day here, a spring day here in Pennsylvania, Zone 6. You know, the birds are singing. It's nice to have some sunshine. You know, the last couple days have been really rainy. Well, anyhow, today I wanted to share with you how you can direct sow Detroit dark red seeds for red beets out in your vegetable garden. So thanks for joining me today. So the raised bed right behind me is a 4-foot by 8-foot section. You know, these raised beds that I have here, I have 3 sections. They're 4-foot by 32 feet long, divided into 4 8-foot sections. So it really makes it nice for me to plant my vegetables nice and organized. And I also fill these with my composted leaf mulch that I mend with topsoil. I ended up getting a bulk delivery here from Barnside Compost every spring. I ended up paying about $30 a yard and about $20 or so for delivery. And so I also amended this with some of my alfalfa pellets and my soy meal. And you know, these red beets, anything that has a root or a fruit, likes at least 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. The more the better. And your green, leafy greens like your kale, your collard greens, Swiss chard, they can get away with 4 to 6 hours of sunlight. So maybe that information might help you plan your garden. But out here in my garden, in this section, they're going to be definitely getting a good 8 hours of sunlight. I'm also going to be covering this 16-foot bed section here with a low tunnel hoop house and covering it with a spun bonded polyester row cover, because I also have my kale in this bed, and it'll also protect the plants from the cabbage looper worm and also from some deer that I have on my property. But you know, behind every seed pack they have some helpful information. I ended up buying this from a local Ace hardware store. It's a Livingston seed company. I've always had good success from that company. But here's some helpful information here. It says here, our most popular beet variety. Detroit Dark Red is delicious and unbeatable for canning and pickling. It has a robust, sweet flavor with an intense, bright, crimson red color. The 13-inch to 16-inch glossy tops are tasty and nutritious greens, rich in vitamins A and C. And you also want to make sure you keep these watered during the planting time. Make sure they don't dry out. And also, you can plant these around 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep. And you can plant these a couple inches apart. And then once they start to grow up above the soil, you make sure you can thin them anywhere from 2 to 4 inches apart. And the maturity is about 58 days. And you can sow these after danger of frost here. Now since I'm covering these with my low tunnel greenhouse or hoop house, I can plant these out maybe a month before the last frost date. And so if you cover it with like a 6 mil polyethylene, you might be able to plant them out even like 6 weeks before your last frost date. But if you don't use a low tunnel hoop house, maybe a couple weeks before your last frost date. You know, it all depends on the temperature right around that time. So anyhow, why don't we get started planting these delicious and tasty Detroit dark red beets. So what else I have found helpful in the garden is I have here a soil temperature conditions for vegetable seed germination chart. You can get this online. I got it from Alabama Cooperative Extension System. But what it does is it gives you a list of vegetables on the left and then a minimum, optimum range of soil temperature when you should plant your direct sow your seeds in the garden. And I have here a meat thermometer right here, and so that's what you can use to check your soil temperature. And so right now the soil temperature here is about 48 degrees, and with the sun coming up today, you know, it's probably going to raise it up to like 50 degrees. And here on the chart here for red beets, it tells you minimum soil temperature is 40 degrees, but the optimum soil temperature is 50 to 85 degrees. You know, this is helpful when you're planting lettuce or peas or Swiss chard. And what I did is I covered this with some plastic laminate with all my different charts, and that way it helps them last a lot longer. And so what I'm going to be doing here is planting my red beets in half of this 4-foot by 8-foot garden section. And what I'm going to do is probably come in about 6 inches. I'm going to use my little story pole here and just screed back and forth and leave a line here about 6 inches from the edge. And then I'm going to go back another 12 inches. And screeding them like this also leaves like a 1/2 inch trench or furrow for me to plant the seeds in. And so it really accomplishes two purposes here. And then I'm going to take the seeds out of my pocket here, open them up, and then you just want to create like a V here and start just tapping your pack. You know, once you develop a rhythm, you know, they'll start dropping out about every 1 inch apart. And you can also, you can just pick them back out again and drop them in better if they don't drop in the way you want them to. And so I'm going to go through here and lay out my seeds, and then you can just take your hand and backfill them with your hand. You also want to make sure the seeds again are about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep. Make sure you're not backfilling any clumps of soil. You know, you want that soil bed to be nice and soft, nice compost, kind of like a plush mattress. And so I'm going to finish laying these out here, and then you want to make sure you water these also. Also, if, you know, dropping them out of the pack doesn't work very well, you know, it's also, you can just put them in the palm of your hand and just drop them in about 1 inch apart. You know, this way works fine too. Doesn't take that long to put them in. And you know, you plant them about 1 inch apart because not every seed's going to germinate. Then again, thin them out anywhere from a couple inches apart, depending on how young you want to eat your red beets. And so I'm just going to take my hand then and just backfill it, and then tamp it down real well. And I also like to take a rock or a marker and mark where each row is. That way it gives you an idea on where you want to water these. And so I'm going to take my watering can and water these in really well. You really want to make sure you keep these seeds nice and moist during the germination period. You don't want them drying out, especially if it's a sunny day. So you definitely want to keep an eye on that. And then I'm going to cover this now with a short cut-off piece of my spun-bonded polyester. And so I have here a scrap piece, a remnant piece of some of my row cover. It's about 2 feet wide by 8 feet long. And I just put a couple bricks on one end, stretch it across, put a couple bricks on the other end and weigh it down. And this is just going to help protect those seeds in the soil from those heavy rains. It'll keep them well protected, you know, from the rabbits even, and even some of the deer. But like I said earlier, I'm going to eventually be putting a low tunnel hoop house over this 16-foot garden section where I'll have my kale and my red beets here, and also some dinosaur kale here on this other half of the garden. But yeah, it's well worth the time in the beginning to install this row cover. Well, anyhow, I just want to thank you for joining me today out here in the garden. It seems as though the wind's picking up a little bit. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the section below. And you could also visit us at plantsmartliving.com to learn more about gardening and how to reclaim your health. So anyhow, I hope you have a wonderful day today. So until next time, this is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred.